Welcome to 24 Lives Per Second, Guernsey's only movie podcast. If this were a Friends episode, this would be titled The One Before the One Where Pete leaves to move to England with his fiancée, but we aren't insufferable morons living in inexplicably large apartments, so this is episode 8, Big Willie style. Brace yourselves, it's a long one. My name is Winter Titan, and I've done it. I'm seeing Prometheus tomorrow night, having not seen a trailer since Christmas. Yes, that's right, I've beaten the internet. Screw you, internet. With me are Russ, Roadhouse Calloway.
Hello.
And straight from the Guernsey Comedy Festival's open mic night, Pete, penultimate episode, Splitter, Taylor.
Hello.
In this episode, we'll be reviewing all the big releases at the Mallard, including Dark Shadows, The Dictator, and What to Expect When You're Expecting. In the second half, we'll delve into new DVD and Blu-ray releases, Chronicle and Shame. First up, we were supposed to have Men in Black 3, but no one went to see it. Brilliant. So moving on, the first film tonight is Dark Shadows.
My name is Barnabas Collins. 2 centuries ago, I made Collinwood my home. My love. Until a jealous witch cursed me, condemning me to the shadows. What have you done? For all time.
What the hell is this?
He's coming. He's coming.
Hear me, future dweller. What is the year?
1972.
1972. My beloved Collinwood. The Collins family.
Who the hell is this?
I'm a vampire, madam.
Yeah.
He's not staying with us forever, is he?
I like him.
Welcome home, Barnabas Collins.
How soon can the horses be ready?
We don't have horses. We have a Chevy.
What sorcery is this?
Reveal yourself, tiny songstress.
Are you stoned or something?
They tried stoning me, my dear. It did not work.
In Dark Shadows, Tim Burton directs Johnny Depp as a vampire who escapes from 200 years in the grave to find his once illustrious family have fallen to rack and ruin. Now, I think I'm the only one to have seen this film.
Mm-hmm. We've done well this
And what I'll say is that Tim Burton really needs to make a different film. This is Edward Scissorhands light, and Edward Scissorhands was good.
Yeah, well, I'm a big Edward Scissorhands fan.
Come on. I mean, I do like Burton. I think Batman, Big Fish, Beetlejuice and Edward are fantastic movies, and they've got sort of a very Burton stamp on them, but they're all really different. But this is just, I think he's starting to become sort of a parody of himself, and Johnny Depp is now a well-paid clothes horse. I think that's what he does now in cinema. He turns up, wears a wig and a coat or something.
Yeah, I mean like I said, I haven't seen it, but the problem I had with it when I first saw the trailer was I'm not sure how long the two of them can continue to make films where Johnny Depp has loads of white makeup on his face. You know, it seems like a really easy decision to make for them every time.
It also seems like that's where they start, and then they say, right, we've got to write a script now, rather than, this is this excellent script, we should do it this way.
Yeah, and sort of having seen Dark Shadows, I've got to say that I think that's probably what happened, because I mean there are a lot of problems with this film. I mean the family are all completely unlikable, all really uninteresting.
It's not a good combo.
He does have this love interest. Johnny Depp's character, there's a nanny who goes to stay with him, becomes the love interest, but she disappears for massive chunks of the film to the point where you don't really care about her as a love interest. You can't invest anything because there's nothing to invest in, and it becomes quite boring. There's just nothing to grab hold of. In short, I'll just wrap this one up really quickly. I think Tim Burton has spent his entire career wishing that he had made The Addams Family. And this is his attempt, and unfortunately it's not as funny or as interesting or heartfelt or even as kind of tangible as a film as The Addams Family was. I'm a big fan of The Addams Family. I think it's a beautiful film. I think the story's great, having Fester come in and sort of be the outside character into the family. It's fantastic, and Burton must look at it with envy, and I think his whole career is him thinking, I really wish I'd made that film, because that film's going to be around in 20 odd years, and a lot of mine aren't. So my review is Okay, and last night my better half and I went to watch What to Expect When You Were Expecting, and we recorded our brief conversation on the way home, so I'm going to post that up separately because we've got enough stuff to get through. Although, what are you expecting the review to be? Because yes, that's probably it.
Absolutely terrible.
Yeah, I know. Maybe happily optimistic.
No, I think there'll be no redeeming features in it, and I think they'll both. I don't know about your wife, but I just say you would absolutely hate it.
Almost an insult.
Oh, yeah.
No, but she might have a different taste. Well, you hate a lot of stuff, though.
I hate everything.
Exactly.
But
you're misanthropic.
One thing I was thinking today about it, though, was years ago, if you had stars of this caliber kind of in one film, they'd be at the Alamo, which is a terrible film, so that's not a good example.
The Longest Day.
They'd throw them into a plane and try and crash it, or put them up a tower and set it on fire. And now they just stand around going, "Oh, I'm really rich. My life is terrible."
Well, not only that, but I think, like I say, a serious point is actually hidden beneath that beneath that comment. Is that in years gone by, like I say, you're talking about 10 years ago. If you had that many stars of that level in a film, it was a big deal.
Yeah.
And now it's
definitely
not. Now you get all these horribly soppy and just thin, and that's exactly what I mean. These montage films that they're making, where they just throw everyone at it and they do what they like, and all the names bring people in because it's supposed to be a one shoe fits all. If you like Ashton Kutcher, he's in here. If you like Cameron Diaz, she's there. And if you like,
when I see
that,
those posters, I am always just
Well,
like,
that's what
wow,
I mean.
it's got all these guys.
Yeah.
But then, I'd never want to see the film.
no chance. So I think there's a real epidemic of it going on at the moment, and I'd just say,
But no, it's a similar problem to Dark Shadows, though. Dark Shadows should be a really good film, but I don't know. It's as if what Tim Burton could be is being dragged down by what Wes Anderson is at his worst. Do you know what I mean? And this What to Expect When You're Expecting. It's a bit similar. These are all people who are much better in other films doing something that
don't add up to the sum
doesn't really say anything about anything. But anyway, I'll post that proper review now. Who wants a real review?
Don't know.
I'd like one.
I think we should have one, otherwise, if people haven't turned off already.
Exactly.
Sacha Baron Cohen has returned as the Dictator. Pete, now you've seen this one. Is it The Great Dictator, or is the film dead and about to be dragged from a storm drain, clutching a golden gun?
It's not quite as bad as that last one, but it's not too far off in terms of jokes. It was. I went to see it and I was entertained, but thinking back to it, it just didn't do much. It didn't have much to it, and the jokes were very weak. I mean, there was a couple of jokes, and I said before, most of them are in the trailer. I'd say if you want to actually see this film, watch the trailer, because that's all you really need. But it was this guy's a really nasty character. He's a dictator, and fair enough, a lot of the comedy comes from him being a prick. But the thing is, with Sacha Baron Cohen's other films like Bruno and Borat, they've always had some kind of, I know Bruno might not be everyone's favourite film, but they have some kind of resolution at the end, and you think, okay, well, they have got these redeeming features. This guy is just a dick. He doesn't. I mean, there's a good quote in it actually, and this is actually one of the funny lines, so I'm going to give it away. I think he says, I'm a dickhead like this fruit, but I'm soft on the inside. Like, I can't remember this fruit that they have in his country, and his friend goes, no, you're like an onion. You're a dickhead on the outside, and then you have 20 other layers of dickhead. It's a good line, but it's one of the best ones in there, I thought. And that's exactly what it is. And that's why it's hard to... Because you don't really root for him, because he's not a nice guy.
See, the thing is with Sacha Baron Cohen, I always get the impression that he's quite a clever guy.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think he's very intelligent. I think he's very intelligent.
Well, he went to Oxford, I know.
Is he making clever films, Russ?
Well, I think what it was for me was, it's the same thing I find with like I say, I disregard Bruno because I'm not a big fan of the Bruno film. But in terms of Ali G, where he started from, and then coming through with Borat, and then kind of follow through to this, is that what you always get with Sacha Baron Cohen is you get this massively broad range of comedy, from the most silly and toilet-based humour you can get to actually pretty damn intelligent stuff, and that is all. I think that's all in there as well. I think there's poo jokes where he poos on a lady's head. He actually poos on a lady's head, and then there's jokes about what it is to be a dictator and kind of what that is. He does a big speech at the end, which although you see it coming, does raise some very. It is a clever point to make about well, you're not living in a dictatorship. You're in America. Because if you were living in a dictatorship, you wouldn't be able to vote. You'd be able to do this, and they would disenfranchise the black people and kind of there's a lot of that kind of going on.
That was clever. But that went on for way too long.
Yeah, and so there's a as always with him, I think there is an underlying level of intelligence, that goes with it, and so that was kind of interesting. As with a lot of his stuff, it's very hit and miss. He throws it out there. There were some jokes in there that I loved because they were very dark. There's quite dark stuff in there, like when him and his head of nuclear affairs, who he fires in the kind of way he actually tries to get killed, but doesn't, as it turns out in the film, in having a discussion about when he was, I think, sexually abusing 14-year-old boys and whether they were liking it or not. And his as a dictator, you're making a face as if how can that possibly be funny?
No. I'm making
because
it sounds more interesting than I thought it might be.
It is. I like to say I enjoyed it.
That sounds really dodgy.
Yeah.
This sounds interesting.
I enjoyed it more than I thought I would, but there were quite a lot of moments in it when I kind of sat there and went, not only is that not funny, but it's
offensive.
Well, not.
I found a lot of it
there were quite. It takes quite a lot for me to get offended and stop laughing at something because I find a lot of stuff funny. And I don't think I wasn't offended, but I was just like, that's not funny. There were just some things in there that weren't. Yeah, exactly. Some things that were just put in there to goad and to just kind of make a point.
Like you say, it wasn't funny enough to be be warranted, basically.
No, I agree with you. And there's a whole scene giving birth that's just I don't know where it came from. It's one of the oddest comedy scenes of the year. It's really strange. I mean, so overall, it's short. It's about 85 minutes long, so it doesn't hang around. No. Ben Kingsley's rubbish. I don't know why he's there because he's
Ben
playing
Kingsley
like the traitorous aide to the dictator who tries to overthrow him, and his accent's not even comedically poor. It's just rubbish, and he just doesn't need him there. So hit and miss. Funnier than I thought it would be. Might offend people who get offended easily. So
I'm surprised that there's not more of an outcry about how horrible. I mean, there's one, and like I was saying before, just to go back to this point, and which is why I think you wouldn't have liked it because I feel you don't like things that. I'm not saying that you do, Russell. But
I am not. You can't offend me, please. Fine.
But it just some of them felt so unnecessary and just shock. I mean, he's playing a Wii game at the start, and he's it looks like he's playing tennis.
Yeah.
But then it cuts to it, and he's hitting someone over the head.
Right.
I think kind of funny. And then he goes select on which game he wants, and he goes, I think Munich Olympics, London Underground, and to bomb these things. But
it's actually it's funnier in retrospect. Yeah, I'm laughing more at it now than I was last night when I watched it.
And there's another one where there's a joke that the woman that he likes is a bit of a hippie and doesn't wear deodorant. And he said, "Oh, she does wear deodorant." And he goes, "Oh, that deodorant's strong enough to gas the Kurds."
Right?
How is that? I just didn't find it funny. It just fell flat.
No,
on me.
you're right. I'm laughing more now. It's very strange because I sat there with quite a few people, and some of them were like you with American Pie. Some of them were uproarious and found it hilarious. But another person who I was there with didn't laugh at the whole thing. So it's that real, kind of split audience thing again. But like I say, for me this time. Do you know what? I know that I'm going to get in trouble for this because I said that I didn't like American Pie because it didn't have any heart. This film,
this
film, you think at one point it might have some heart.
Yeah, and then it doesn't.
Then no, but I like that. I like it for that.
It needed to do that. In fairness.
I think so because you couldn't. I don't think I'm giving away. You can't redeem this man.
No.
You can't. That would be even worse.
Yeah.
That would be like an end of a gangster film where the gangster lives, and off he trots down the road with all his money and his women and his drugs. He kind of has to go off and do his own thing and kind of do what he does, but. Actually, I liked it more sat here now talking about it than I did last night watching it.
See, it's interesting you say that about the lack of heart because one of the reasons I'm sort of sceptical about it is because I find a lot of these films they do this thing where someone has a bad point of view and then comes to America and learns what democracy is.
Yeah,
and I kind of think is it gonna is it gonna break him, etc. Whereas the reason I quite liked Four Lions was because that film seemed to understand that it's not that they haven't experienced people who hate democracy and our freedoms haven't experienced them. They just don't bloody want them.
No,
they just don't. It's a completely different mindset. And I find a lot of these films kind of miss that point. So, I mean, how does it compare to Four Lions? Does it?
It's
no,
very
I
different.
don't think you can
No,
really
it's
compare it
really,
there.
really
Right,
It's not
different tone.
It's
as well.
it's not. It's not really trying to say much.
No,
You know,
it's just
in
really
terms of that.
like you said. There was a couple of clever jokes in it, but for the most part, and you talk about that baby delivering scene. It's weird and it's disgusting.
It's very
Right,
weird.
okay.
Disgusting in a, just a weird.
In a
weird
who
way.
came up with that?
Yeah.
Whether he did, I
Well, but
assume.
it just to me seems like they've pushed it in terms of disgustingness, offensiveness, and some of it works, but a lot of it doesn't.
I'd rather watch Four Lions.
Yeah, I'd rather watch
Four
Right.
Lions is genius.
Yeah.
This is Saturday night with your mates.
Yeah, this is not. I don't
Yeah,
think go and see this at the cinema personally. Although, can I just say to the person in the cinema that was behind me that every time there was a joke, and you know who these people are, they go, and the guy would say, "That's strong enough to gas the curds," and you go, "Curds." Literally say it really loud, or he'd say, "Oh, he delivered that baby," and you go, "Oh, baby." I mean, really loud. So if you're listening, don't do that anymore because it is so annoying.
That's more important than the review.
Yeah, brilliant.
And now it's time to turn our attention to new Blu-ray and DVD releases. Following the phenomenal debut Hunger, director Steve McQueen is reunited with Michael Fassbender in the sex addiction drama Shame.
You're the man. Your pitch, amazing. To nailing it. To nailing it.
Yes.
How'd it go last night?
Good night.
Let's do it again tonight.
And my sister's playing downtown somewhere.
Can I stay for a few days? Why are you so angry?
That's my boss.
Hey, do you want to play?
Your hard drive is filthy. I mean, it is dirty.
Slowly.
Please, will you pick up the phone?
So, what's the story of this one, Pete?
Well, I hadn't actually seen anything about it before I watched it, which is I always like doing with a film. All I knew is that it's about Michael Fassbender. He is
not a documentary.
No,
I hope.
no. He plays. I can't even remember the guy's name actually, but he plays a New Yorker who is basically a sex addict, and it just follows his life around New York, having sex with lots of different people. And that's basically the storyline. But it's a very character based movie. As you
do make it sound like a happy jaunt around town.
No, it's certainly not that. It basically tackles his sex addiction as an addiction. So it's like a drug addiction, and he's always looking very sort of like he's on heroin almost. I think there was a conscious effort to make him look as if he is a drug addict. And yeah, it's a very upsetting film. It's certainly not one you'd probably sit down and enjoy on a Saturday evening. It's quite a hard watch, but I really liked it. And Michael Fassbender, you see a lot of his penis, but he's a very good actor. But he pulls it off. Excuse the pun.
You had me at hard watch.
Oh, I missed hard watch. I missed that. Sorry, I was straight on. He pulls it off.
Oh dear.
And Carey Mulligan as well is very good. And I really, really enjoyed it.
See, I thought it was a really interesting film because I was a really big fan of Hunger.
Yeah.
And like Hunger, it's sort of a study of a subject more than a narrative or any real kind of plot or anything.
You said documentary before. It's kind of feels
Well, it's
like
interesting that he says, study. There is that aspect.
It's very
I know what you
lingering,
mean.
and it's certainly not cut like a. It's not certainly not cut quickly. It's very lingering on scenes that you think, well, why aren't you cutting now? But it's just because it's a very much a focus on him.
I mean, I think it's a really good-looking film. I think it looks fantastic. You can tell. I mean, Steve McQueen is like a video artist and all that, so you can tell. It's really nice to see a film that looks fantastic because so much cinema looks very flat. I mean, what to expect when you're expecting? I also watched a film called The Darkest Hour, And these films, a lot of films just look utterly
made by
abysmal.
numbers.
They look like television. This doesn't look at all like television. I think Fassbender's brilliant in it. I think he's a really interesting actor. He doesn't do much with his acting. He's not an actor given to sort of actorly pronouncements or anything. And I think the whole film's a very subtle, very sort of analytical look at what it's like to have a sex addiction. I mean, what I found about it was I was quite glad they didn't go the whole hog with that drug addiction metaphor sort of thing. He was more like he seemed to exist sort of weirdly outside of the city. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in the films. There's like a scene with an inept waiter, and there's something happens on a subway, and there's a lot of shots of the city not looking quite right, and there is a scene where they go up to watch his sister sing, in a club, and one of the characters says, you forget the city actually looks like this," and it's kind of, I found it really interesting the way it plays the city they're in but it kind of makes it, the whole place seems quite a cold, emotionless place.
They never really show it in the light, actually. And now thinking back to it, usually they're inside if it's daytime.
Well, it's New York, isn't it? And it's New York without. It's like shooting London without the buses and the telephone boxes and the Houses of Parliament. It's just a place. I don't think you ever see the Empire State or things like that. It doesn't reference it in the same way that a lot of places do.
But I think that was the only thing in terms of
and I think
reference.
kind of quite like the character of Brandon. It looks like a city that's about to kind of maybe topple a bit. It looks like somewhere that's kind of, there's all this hedonism going on. There's all this kind of fast living and like big money being made and so on. But it kind of looks like a place that's a bit skeezy and on the edge.
I mean, I think it's funny. You always look back on films that you kind of, you sat and you watched, and like I say, you didn't necessarily enjoy, because I wouldn't say I enjoyed it from a narrative kind of perspective, but I do remember enjoying it from a visual perspective in terms of thinking Steve McQueen is just, I think he's one of the best directors out there at the moment. I think he just, the way he shoots is so measured. And like you say, because of his background and kind of where he comes from, he knows how to put a shot together and he uses it. But it's never, with him, it's never showy. Like, there is a very long take in this film when Michael Fassbender goes out running and, and you're suddenly watching it. And there's things like that, and then, full close-ups and everything. But I don't know, with him, it never seems to take over the actual.
That's right.
That's what I mean.
It doesn't draw attention to himself.
It's not like, I was watching, when you watch Atonement and there's Joe Wright. There's amazing tracking shot in Atonement, but you knew about it because everyone was talking about it. Oh, there's an amazing tracking shot. It goes on for 2 minutes or something, but no one talks about the tracking shot in this. But it's just there, and it's just amazing and it's beautiful. I mean, for me, it's a strange film because I found it strangely intimate and yet kind of very empty at the same time. And it's
a really unsexy film.
Well, that's what I mean. I don't
think
I've seen an unsexier film, with this much sex in it forever. Like you say, you sat there and you just kind of, it's just cringeworthy. And part of that, I think, there's a lot of kind of, like, interesting that, Pete, that you brought up the drug reference, which I think, right, there's also quite a strong, almost like skeletal, like a slightly demonic kind of thing running through it for me as well. There are a couple of shots of him while he's having sex and the faces he's pulling and the grimaces, and it was very kind of Caravaggio-like for me, kind of that kind of painting of real demons in there and kind of things beneath the surface that you may not have thought were there before. And so that was really interesting for me. Like you said, Winter Fassbender, I think he's just an amazing actor. I mean,
he's brilliant.
He's yet to give a bad performance in anything. And so far, he's been in, this. He's done Hunger. He's done Quentin Tarantino, where he was, posh English, taking the mick almost, And then, like I say, you've got Haywire, which you two don't like, but I do. But I think he's the best thing in that in terms of performance-wise. And here we are he's about to. Although we've been talking about, there's a couple at the time of recording this, there's a couple of less than insanely positive reviews of Prometheus, but what the word coming out is that although it might be a slightly not as good as you were hoping for a film, his performance is coming out as being amazing, as what we know to be, the character of David in that. So for me, I personally like films that you're not supposed to enjoy. Like we talked about Snowtown back when we kind of one of the first films we did, one of our kind of earlier podcasts, and not an easy watch either. But sometimes the ones that are hard to watch are the best ones, and I wouldn't rush back to see it next week. But in a couple of years' time, you might put it on when you're feeling particularly happy, and you might want to kick in the nuts. And then I'd put it on. But like I say, I think I've heard that they're doing another film together, Steve McQueen and Fassbender. There's certainly a bit of a Scorsese De Niro relationship going on there, and for me, long may it continue, because they're putting out some of the best cinema out there, I think.
And moving on, we have Chronicle. Now, Chronicle is yet another entrant in the found footage genre, and it tells a story of 3 teens who develop superpowers following an encounter with a green otherworldly object.
Some light.
A pulsating thing.
What do we think of Chronicle?
I don't know if it needed the handheld treatment. That's my kind of... I don't know whether they did it for budgetary reasons, but at the same time, I'm not sure if they did, because the way it's filmed in it, which is quite unique within the handheld genre.
It is in a clever way.
It is, and it gives it it aims to give it a more polished look than you would normally get from a handheld kind of narrative kind of film. And for me, I don't know if it needed it, because it falls down in a few places for me, the whole handheld thing in this film. There's a girl who's doing a blog, and so she turns up and she's got a camera, so it cuts to that.
I like it when she
answers
the door and the camera, and
she's
got
a camera set up, and you're like, so if that didn't work. But it's a minor point. It's a little thing. I mean, overall, I enjoyed it. I mean, I thought it far outshot its means. For the budget it was on, and for the no-name actors that are in it. I know it was written by Max Landis.
Do you know the black guy in that is the guy from The Wire with the cornrows in season 2?
I did not.
I didn't know.
Yes, it is.
I didn't know that. Okay.
They show his picture.
Yes,
and
on the great
picture from The Wire.
There you go. No, I didn't know that.
You're gonna have to beep something I have said there. Seriously.
But no, look, I did enjoy it, and I was really surprised by where it went, because it went big. And for most kind of handheld films, they tend to go small and sparse and don't.
It was a blockbuster.
Well, that's what I mean. It's normally a horror, and you get you don't see very much, but this goes balls to the wall and kind of goes all out. And there's some little bits that don't look amazing, but most of it, I've seen films that spend shed loads more cash than this and look a lot worse. It was an interesting idea, and I did like it. I thought the characters were quite nice. They took their time. They were quite kind of well rounded, and it was an interesting perspective from the whether he's the main lad, but the lad that kind of you tend to follow his narrative arc throughout it. So I would recommend it. I didn't love it. I thought it was okay. And so that's me really, a little bit.
I'm gonna go on this one. I think Chronicle is the best superhero film that has come out this year.
What? That's impossible.
No, it's not. I think it's a really the handheld camera, the sort of handheld camera video diary aspect of it does fall down horrendously in a couple of places. But I think what it does is it forces a story to be smaller than it should be. It sort of forces in the microscope. And what it reminded me of was Unbreakable.
Well, as soon as you said the best thing, for some reason, why did that come into my head?
Because Unbreakable is the best film
I love
about
Unbreakable.
a superhero.
Unbreakable is amazing. It's the best origin story you'll get.
And I think it's not quite Unbreakable, but I think it's got a fantastic story arc. And the characters are brilliant in it.
Yeah, that's what it does very well.
I mean, it's got some genuinely, oh my word, moments in it. There are a couple of things that happen as they're sort of discovering their powers and sort of getting used to them. But really, I mean, they make you jump. They make you think. There's really clever ways of doing bits and pieces. Really clever little bits of detail. Like some of the stuff they wear when they're kind of getting used to some of their powers. I thought that was a really neat little thing, because
it's what you do.
You go and get those clothes. And I've got to say, you know what? It's like it's about an hour, just under an hour and a half long.
Yeah, I thought it was a really good.
It's got better characters than the Avengers has. It's got a better story than the Avengers. It's a much more satisfying film. It's much more interesting. It's more witty than the Avengers is at any point. And I really liked the Avengers. And I was gobsmacked by this film. I thought it was utterly fantastic.
Well, the one thing when I was watching it that I thought was, this is the film that Heroes should have been.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, because like I said, I think we talked about Heroes before, and how whether we did it on the podcast or kind of in passing to each other, is that Heroes started out really brilliantly, but then kind of petered off. And while I was watching this, I was thinking, this is what it should have been like. Here they are.
It doesn't
that's
cop
kind of the
out
way it
on
works.
the ending as well.
No.
It doesn't shy away from anything. It goes the whole way. And I wouldn't agree with you saying it's one of the best superhero movies, but
it's brilliant.
for me, it comes pretty close.
Yeah, Pete, it's brilliant. What are you talking about?
I did really enjoy it. I mean, I watched it a while ago now when it came out in the cinema. And I wasn't left with a feeling of, wow, that was amazing. I knew it would be good because I watched the trailer, and for some reason I knew it would be good, and it was good. And yeah, I mean I think anyone would like this film. If you don't like superheroes, you'll like this film just because, like you say, it gives a lot of time to each character. There's 3 main guys. They're all, you can empathize with each one, and it follows them through a very definitive story arc, and then there's a good payoff at the end. And I think they might be doing a second one.
I really hope not.
Yeah.
I really hope this sort of stays as one, because if it goes to a second one, then they'll throw more money at it.
Yeah,
and they'll drop the handheld.
It feels
thing
kind of quaint, doesn't it? As well as being quite a big movie, it feels intimate.
I just thought
this might be the camera thing.
I just thought the character arc was spot on. The idea that you take someone who is not popular, who has these sort of difficulties in his life. You give him and his friends superpowers.
Well, it's
and
also
how each of them responds to the powers is fantastic. It's really good. From sort of how one of the characters he's very outgoing. He's very popular, but he's also a really generous guy, especially to sort of the central character. And then the central character's cousin is also a really interesting thing, because you kind of get the idea he's going to maybe become
they weren't
something
just
much more
stereotypes.
interesting.
No, they weren't just like the jock, the normal guy, and the recluse. Like you said, they were really fleshed out well, but they're not to the detriment of the running time or to the plot moving
85
forward.
minutes. It's
exactly.
fantastic. I have a real problem with films being much longer than
they need to be.
as they often
a good
are.
example, actually, because that went on. I mean, you needed it possibly, but this was just enjoyable throughout. There wasn't a moment where you thought, oh, well, this is dragging a bit. It got through things fairly quickly without feeling rushed.
I just felt the philosophy of it was fascinating. The characters were fascinating. I think we've had Avengers and we've got Dark Knight Rising. Rises of the
Risen.
Dark Knight or whatever. I don't know. One of them coming out later this summer, and I think it's going to have to go some way to be as smart as Chronicle is, and I know you've got sort of the whole investment of 2 other films into it, but I think the reason I've really taken to Chronicle is that it didn't come off with the kind of COD philosophy that you find in The Dark Knight. It had central solid ideas to it, whereas in The Dark Knight, that whole kind of I'm not the person you deserve, I'm the person you need, or some all that kind of right.
But I do think
bullshit,
it's easier to do that with an original idea than it is with an established character hierarchy.
Only if you're not being bold.
Yeah, no, for sure. But I don't think we can accuse of Christopher Nolan of not being bold with the Batman franchise.
But the interesting thing about Christopher Nolan is the not Batman films are the better ones.
Oh yeah, for sure. But that's because Memento is just one of the best films ever made. But that's by the by.
I would highly recommend Chronicle to anyone.
Me too.
I would recommend it. I would, like I say,
just not as fervent.
Yeah, exactly. Didn't have the same, whoop-de-doo kind of response as you guys. But I enjoyed it. It was good. I would definitely recommend it.
Last but not least, we've reached the garlic ciabatta part of the show where we share and tear. Someone else is going to start writing these. I should be banned from this. Where we share and tear other filmic morsels. So, what's everyone been watching this week? Russ, do you want to start? Have you had?
Well, yeah, to be honest with you, like I say, I've been out of the loop a little bit, but I mean, I know that we talked about it before. The only thing I've seen the last couple of weeks that apart from what we've talked about, is Moneyball. I know that Pete talked about it a good about 2 or 3 weeks ago. Just want to say that I loved it. I thought it was amazing. What I say, I think up there with Friday Night Lights is one of the best sports movies of the last kind of decade.
Friday Night Lights. Love it.
But you know what? Completely different. Completely different to Friday Night Lights, but equally as brilliant. It's probably the best anti-sports movie about sports you'll ever see. Yeah. Don't expect cliches of last-minute saves and things like that. Well,
there is
it's funny,
of that.
But that's interesting. Expect that, but not cliche-wise. Don't expect to see it. That's what I loved about it. It's a sports movie about economics and maths and statistics, and it's got amazing performances by Brad Pitt and by Jonah Hill in it as well. And to be honest, across the board, the acting's just brilliant in it.
Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Who kind of, he looks crazy and he looks bald and fat, which is interesting. So that's the only thing I've seen was Moneyball, but I did think it was 100% excellent, and I would firmly recommend it.
Okay, I mean, I've seen a couple. I attended Cine Guernsey's screening of Weekend. Full disclosure, I'm a member of Cine. I'm part of the Cine Guernsey committee, as are we all. They showed Weekend, in which two guys meet and spend the proverbial length of time together. It's a really intimate film. It's brilliantly acted. It's universal in the way it kind of gets under the skin of sort of blossoming romances. It's quite a graphic film in some ways.
Is it racy?
It's a bit racy, but it's weird. I was trying to explain this the other day. It's weird seeing sex on screen in which one of the partners isn't given sort of precedence over the other one.
Okay, yeah.
Because usually most films are shot full men. There's a question of kind of who watches the film.
Yeah.
Whose desires are we trying to reflect? It's always men, but it's weird watching a film where
that doesn't
you see
exist.
sex and it's not one studly guy,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, and the woman go, "Oh, you're brilliant," and it's just two people having very sort of intimate relations without, and it's graphic but without being lingering, because there's not a kind of a male audience wanting to see a woman's body sort of shown out, which was really fascinating. But sort of beyond all of that sort of pretentious rubbish, it's a really nice, like intimate, lovely little film. Very funny in parts. Yeah, great film. Also, really highly recommended is The Grey.
Oh, I want to see this.
It's Liam Neeson versus wolves. It's kind of like a survival thriller. It's like Alive meets The Edge.
Okay. Big fans of The Edge.
Love The Edge. It's not as sort of verbose as The Edge, which was written by David Mamet and was more about the philosophy of survival. The Grey is just about survival, and it's sort of a very manly film, but it's got this kind of weird sort of existential kind of streak running through it as well. It's one of those films, I think, if you're open to kind of the philosophy of manliness and kind of spiritualism, you might I think you take away a lot more from it, and there is more to it. But you know what? There's some really tense, kind of properly bruising set pieces. There's bits in it that kind of make you think, I wish Cliffhanger had been. That's the film I wanted Cliffhanger to be. That's the film I wanted Alive to be. It's a brilliant film, and Liam Neeson is just awesome in it. And actually using his Irish accent.
Really?
For once, which is a bonus.
Good times.
So, Pete, what have you seen?
Not much again, but on Sky Movies at the moment, I think it'll still be around, is Rango.
Yeah.
And I've been interested to see this because
I haven't seen
you mentioned Johnny Depp before, just doing these, and it's really, really good. And I'd suggest both of you watch it because it's essentially an animated film for film fans.
Okay.
The plot isn't anything original. The plot is Chinatown, which is really interesting. Rango is a lizard, falls out the back of a car as he's going along the desert, and encounters lots of different creatures in the desert. Comes across this town, and then it becomes a western. And a really good western.
I love westerns.
Western with a western Chinatown with just so many film references. And I mean, I can't think of all of them, but there is a lot of Once Upon a Time in the West. I mean, he walks into this bar and all you can hear is. So it's for a long, long time, and you're just thinking, yeah, this is cool. You pick up all these little film references. There's some Star Wars film references. There's, that he even meets Clint Eastwood at some point, who's a guy searching for metal in a golf buggy with this hat, and it's just really cool. And it doesn't pull any punches either because it's for the old. If you're watching it with children, they have to be over 6, 7 because the first animal that Rango meets is a possum that's been run over. And he's just got a big tyre thing through them. Not comically, quite painfully. But it's just very mythical. He meets a lot of Mexican people that talk about philosophy, and it's just really good. And he plays this kind of sort of anti-hero. He's an actor where he is. He does lots of acting before so he plays the part of this sheriff that's come to enforce the law. And obviously it all goes wrong at some point for him, and he gets. But the whole adventure is really good. It's not hilarious, but when they do the jokes, they're quite adult jokes. Like I won't give you an example, but they're good. And it's certainly not a laugh a minute. But in terms of the film references, it's just very good. And the way it's done is beautiful. It's the best animated film looks wise that I've seen, really, just because it's so cinematic, and I don't really see many other cinematic films that are animated. So yeah, I'd really recommend it. Johnny Depp is, you don't really notice it's him, to be honest.
But it's a good Johnny Depp film. He hasn't got a white face,
and I think, and it's got a lot of West. I mean, they've almost got Ennio Morricone soundtracks and sort of gone, right, let's twist them a tiny bit.
Okay.
So probably so they don't have to pay. But I really recommend this. Anyone who's a film fan will love it, because the story isn't fantastic, but you'll just be picking out the films the whole way through, and I like doing that.
So thanks for listening, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel on YouTube and like us via the Guernsey Film Info page on Facebook. Next time round, watch out for a Prometheus review. Hopefully get one of those up over the weekend, and then some in-depth spoilerific Prometheus shenanigans on our Alien Saga flavoured podcast the next time round. Thanks for listening.